Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I am your host today, Mayor Tim Elinski, and with me, as usual, is Anne and Damien Browning from Steps to Recovery. I'm thinking about making a little card, like a little punch card, right?
Should.
For how many times you guys have been in on this program to talk with me.
Hey, we love it.
Yeah, and after maybe like 10 punches on the card, you get to be a line item in the budget, right, with that?
Yeah, that would work great. That would actually work really good. Yeah.
No, we're with Anne and Damien today so that we can talk a little bit more about Steps to Recovery and some of the more pressing needs that you have right now with your organization. But before we do, if we could just take a second to introduce the two of you to the public, the viewing public who may not be aware of who you are and what you're doing here in the Verde Valley. So let's start with Anne, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm Anne Browning, and we're doing, well, what we have going on is a structured sober living facility. Mm-hmm. And to help further benefit that facility, which actually we have 2, almost 3 right at this moment, but to help benefit that facility, we have our Miracles Happen resale store. We have our eBay to help keep that funding. We also have a warehouse. It's a huge operation, and it takes a lot to do that. Right. Yeah, we're just running to the wire with all of it right now.
Okay. Damien, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm Damien Browning. I'm Executive Director and co-founder of Steps to Recovery Homes, which is a nonprofit organization that my wife and I started. Anne and I started 6 years. August 1st will be 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years ago with 3 credit cards for the community to help people. I think we're helping a lot of people. There's over 140 people in the community that are living a good life today and not getting arrested and not neglecting their children and, actually being productive, paying taxes, holding jobs. We have a 42% success rate. One of the things we did was we wanted to figure out how can we maximize the success rate and lower the recidivism rate. So we put a whole bunch of what we learned in our own recovery into what we have our people do. Mm-hmm. And then it's just kind of grown. I mean, it's evolved into something that we continue to put more and more into it, and it helps. The more we put in, the more people are successful. Mm-hmm. It's a good program. Yeah. We just purchased. We got a loan from the USDA, so we just got our first facility. So that's going to be our own. Okay. It's a 4-plex for the men. Mm-hmm. We're looking at some other options to maybe purchase a women's house and maybe our own storefront.
Okay.
So,
now you say you do structured sober living, but you do a lot more than that in our community, at least from my perspective. Yeah. A lot of your folks go through, a program, right, to help them.
It's not just a halfway house; it's an actual program. Right. So we have life coaching. They have to tell us they're very accountable for where they're going. They have to. There's a bunch of stuff they're doing. There's a job development program that we put together. Mm-hmm. So 98% come in with no money, and now for the first 2 to 8 weeks, they can work for their stay there. Mm-hmm. Up to 7, we do 17.5 hours a week or whatever. And then when they're not working, we're helping them build resumes. We're working with NACOG and Job Connection and other things to help them be successful. So I think in week 4 or 5, they go out and start looking for a job, and we give them clothes to do that. Mm-hmm. They're already done mock interviews. They go out and they have a workable resume, and they're ready to get a job that's actually a good job, one that they want.
Mm-hmm. And your job placement, how successful is that program?
It's pretty good. I think it's, I don't have a percentage on it yet, but I think 40 something people went through it, and I think from what we know, there's like 25 that are employed right now.
Okay.
So last year.
That's great.
It's pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty high. And it's because we're giving them the tools, but obviously, with addiction, it's, it's a personal decision. So it's not going to ever be 100%. There's so many variables that go into these individuals' lives. Right. They have to deal with stressors and trauma and just a lot of stuff. That's why we do things like Erase the Stigma. Mm-hmm. We just had our Erase the Stigma Day, and we try to inform the community on what addiction and mental health is and kind of what goes into the actual recovery process.
Right.
So there's some kind of understanding. Addiction, we'll talk about it again and again. Addiction is the #1 crisis in America, right? Mm-hmm. We got, they say 195 people a day are dying of opioid overdose in our country.
Right.
And that's not talking about alcohol-related deaths or meth or neglecting your children or losing your job or somebody beating their wife or stealing or getting locked up in jail or there's so much, you know. So
Sure. Yeah, dying's one thing, but certainly there's a lot more impact beyond just losing a life.
Huge impact, and it hits families, it hits our schools, it hits taxpayers. I mean, so somebody has to do it. And our thing is like, you know, you can't just have a place for these people to stay. You have to give them tools. You have to build them up. You have to empower them, right? And one of the good things I'll talk about really quick is the sober living bill. You know, Arizona just passed the sober living bill.
Right.
So that's really cool. We were kind of helping with the process of that, and it's going to make any kind of halfway house or sober living facility get a sober living licensure through the Department of Health.
Weren't you on the task force that looked into that whole thing?
Well, I was on part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a piece of it to get it started, and
Okay.
because you know, that's one of my things. I really want a safe place. You know, if we really want to make a difference in somebody's life and in our community, you can't just throw them in a house.
Right.
And you know, not have a clean house, not give them tools. I mean, there has to be, not give them structure, not hold them accountable. You know, there has to be some of that stuff happening. So we're pretty excited about that. You know, but that's, you know, now I got to go come up with a whole nother $3,200 just to get that licensure.
Right.
But our standards are already up. Our standards are higher than what they're asking. So
Okay.
we're happy about that.
That's great. Now you just touched on it briefly, but it's your Erase the Stigma event. I believe is this the 4th or 5th year you've?
It was the 4th. It was last weekend.
Okay, it was last weekend. So that's another way that I think you add a lot of value to our communities by putting that event on. So can you just talk about a little bit about the history of that event and why it was important to you to bring that to Cottonwood?
Well, it was in my mind. I wanted not just a recovery event, not for just people in recovery, but something for the family, something for the community, something for, you know, so when, because the things happen and you have an individual that hits a crisis and the person around them doesn't really know what to do about it. So there's a lot of fear there. So what happens is with the fear is they kind of push it away. You know, they're scared of it. And what that does is it isolates the situation and makes that crisis stronger for that individual. And I don't think that's part of the solution. I think part of the solution is actually understanding what they're going through, realizing, hey, we got a lot of help out here. There's a lot of resources for you, and caring about that individual. And, you know, hey, let me help you. I understand what you're going through. Maybe I haven't been through it, but here's some tools for you. You know, you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
Yeah, that's why we started it. Education and awareness.
Right. Yeah. And you have partners, and you folks coming in from Prescott, from you know, many from here in the Verde Valley, and
We had a booth from Phoenix this year.
Yeah. Okay.
From Phoenix.
And tell us a little bit about who you have present at the Erase the Stigma event. What sort of service providers?
Well, we have a lot of different area 12-step fellowships that come in, and a lot of them are part of the help for the individual who's dealing with the addict or the alcoholic or the, you know, so we have those booths that come in. We also have booths there for 12-step, you know, fellowships to get information out there for those people, for their loved ones, you know. We also had, we've got some mental health providers that come in.
Yeah.
This year we had, who were our sponsors?
Well, we had Spectrum and Azra, Mat Force, Red Mountain Recovery, NAMI. Mental Health Coalition. Verde Valley actually partnered with us on the event. City of Cottonwood, you guys helped us out. You know, there were some very key people that got involved. Chamber of Commerce, Cottonwood Chamber of Commerce pitched in. And so Thrivent Financial pitched in.
Okay. You had some guest speakers as well that came in to speak to the.
Yeah, we have 5 speakers, and there was a lot of booths. You know, Verde Valley Sanctuary was there, Mat Force, Smart Recovery. There was a whole bunch of different booths, you know, that came in, and it's good because there's information. So we talk about the problem, and then it's like, okay, now here's some resources.
Right.
You know, and what's cool about that event is you could hear a pin drop, because I made it to where all the exhibit booths are with the speakers. It was one of my goals is to have everybody in the room. How do we get people in the room?
Right.
You know, because if you go to other conferences, you usually have a breakout session. Right. And you go in the breakout session, there's 100 people at the booths, and there's like 5 or 10 people in the breakout session.
Right.
That was always a confliction for me, like, why aren't all these people need to hear this?
Sure.
You know, so right now I've got it to where everybody in the room gets to hear. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We had about 150 people show up.
That's
we
fantastic.
fed everybody.
That's great. Good.
It was good.
do that once a year. You have a whole handful of other events that you do throughout the year. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. We're kind of getting short on time. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get some of your alumni in here to speak to the listening public out there. But
Absolutely.
before we do, you're both in the trenches, and I see you driving around hauling stuff to and from your storefront and just really working your tail off day in, day out. You guys are in the trenches. You started this with your credit cards, as you've said. You have a lot of passion for it. So, Anne, if you wouldn't mind first, just what is it that, and I know you both have dealt with your own recovery issues, but what is it that motivates you day in, day out to stick to it and work so hard on behalf of folks recovering?
You know, I love people. Mm-hmm. And I also work as a paramedic. Mm-hmm. So for me, giving back to the public is something I've always had in my heart. I've been doing that for over 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I've been clean for coming up on 28 years in August. So I was able to give back a lot of what I did when I was out there. Mm-hmm. I felt like that was the way to give back mm-hmm. to my community. And then starting Steps to Recovery Homes was just another step towards being able to do that. Becoming that productive member of society. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and there's a lot of things that we do. We don't ever do anything that we don't think, how is this going to benefit somebody else? Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't always benefit us really well, but how's it going to benefit somebody, and how's it going to help our community? Right. Because if our community is safer, if our community it feels better about what's going on, then we feel better about what's going on in our community. Sure.
Okay. Damien, 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is the people, seeing somebody actually put their life together and hold a job and get their family back and get their kids back. I mean, our alumni. Because I'm telling you, we are overwhelmed. We are very we're overwhelmed. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. A lot of variables go into this. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of darkness. But when you see somebody, like we're going to come in and they have their life together and they're smiling, mm-hmm. especially when you see them when they're coming in and they're broken up, right. That matters. Yeah. Changing lives.
Great. Well, there's many ways that folks at home right now too can change lives, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I know the organization could use as much help as you can get from the community. So toward the end of the program, we'll talk about ways that folks at home can also have a huge impact on folks' lives, the people that you serve. So we're going to boot Anne out of here, and we're going to bring in one of your alumni and take a quick break, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you.